but I'm going to start out by talking about the election. And let me start off by saying, if you guys didn't read my analysis this morning, that it's important as we talk about what we saw happen in the California election yesterday, that we remember that this is like the fifth or sixth inning of the ball game. It's not a perfect analogy, but the point that I'm trying to make is that a lot of ballots remain to be counted. I talked to Paul Mitchell over at PDI, whose politics I do not agree with, but whose analysis I often do agree with. And Paul and I were talking, and he thinks we're going to get to 8.5 to 9 million total ballots cast in California. And if that's the case, that means we have about 3.5 to 4 million ballots left to count, which means that the estimates are kind of right. We have about 40% of the vote outstanding, somewhere between 35 and 40%. So yeah, that puts us in the sixth inning, and so everything that we talk about today is with the caveat that there's a ton more votes coming in, and there's no way to entirely know where those are going to go. But if you were doing statistics and sampling, you can guess that what we have so far is sort of representative. But I will add one more thing that the politically sophisticated folks have already cued on to. By the way, if you read what I wrote, then you would already be amongst the sophisticated, which is that Democrats were holding a chunk of Democrats were holding on to their ballots later because they were unclear where they might want to be casting their ballots in order to either stop a GOP lockout, which was not going to occur, or some of them were trying to effectuate making sure that maybe the Dems locked out the GOP. And then last but not least, in a race that really excited nobody, there's Lance finally figured it out. In a race that excited nobody, you have an enthusiasm gap, I think, in the governor's race that causes people to vote late. So my quick recap, because now Lance is with us, is that Paul Mitchell thinks we've probably got about 3.5 to 4 million votes left to count out of a total of 8.5 to 9 million. So there's a lot to come. So with all of that, we're going to dig in and start to cover the race. Hi, Lance, how are you?
I'm good. I am so sorry about the technical difficulties. Hopefully this works all right.
That's all right. Everybody that I know says you're a difficult person. So, this is just one more, starting with Mrs. Christensen. So this is a start, right? Before I'm just kidding, everybody. I think Lance is an angel. So I don't know if you see the chat group, but Mary Barkey says hello to you. Worth noting, by the way, she did not say hi to me. So that's fine. I don't take any of this stuff personally.
Yeah.
Hold on. I got to figure out how to kick Mary off of the call. So anyways, let's start, if you don't mind, Lance. And first, let me introduce you. So for those people who don't know Lance's number one qualification for being on this Substack live conversation is that he's my dear friend of many, many years. And not to sound too romantic, but we can complete each other's sentences. And when I say that, we really see the world through the same lens, not only as fellow conservatives, but through a political lens as well. But I can tell you, I have a lot of great Lance Christensen memories, but my favorite ones, this is a goofy memory, but for all of the years that he worked in the state legislature, every year on the Flash Report, we would do our top 10 list or top 20 list of the worst bills in the legislature. And invariably, whoever Lance worked for was the person that I would want to focus on, because that allowed Lance and I to really dig in and talk about this stuff. So I feel like, what the heck is going on? I feel like we have a third. It says camera off. Do you see that?
Yeah. Is that your other guest?
I wonder if it would be Susan. That's the second thing I want to explain to everybody. For the first half of the program, it's supposed to be Susan is with me the whole program. She's not here at all because she's having technical issues. And then Lance is with us the first 45 minutes. And then Lance will be stepping aside. And then my friend Matt Klink is going to come in for the second 45 minutes. So, unfortunately for Lance, except for maybe a quick comment, it means we're going to be talking about most of the Los Angeles politics with Matt because that's kind of his turf and his strong suit. So, anyways, I think Susan's still trying to figure it out. She may or may not. I hope she can join us because she told me she's got 2 pages of notes that she's prepared, as opposed to Lance and I, who are, of course, trying to do this on the seat of our pants, edge of our seat.
By the seat of our pants.
By the seat of our. I mix metaphors almost as much as my friend Jim Kineen, who's also here. Hi, Jim. He's the big metaphor mixer. So, anyways, let me also say about Lance. Lance is the vice president, the vice president of the California Policy Center. The people at the California Policy Center have forgotten more about policy in California than I know, so I look to them a lot for the stuff that's going on. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Lance has a lot of years of experience working in the California legislature. And of course, Lance has a unique perspective as somebody who ran for statewide office himself. I was proud to vote for you twice, Lance, for California Superintendent of Public Instruction. And now we have Sonia Shaw, who's going to be carrying that banner into the general election if we get ahead of ourselves. But if it's all right with you, Lance, I wanted to start by talking about the governor's race because the question that I keep getting the most from people right now is, are the numbers going to stick? Are they going to change? Does Hilton have enough lead? Does Becerra have enough lead? Are there too many votes left to count? So, again, giving credit where credit is due, I posited this question to Paul Mitchell. For those of you who don't know, he's the smart cat that, among other things, drew all the Prop 50 lines that completely screw conservatives in California. But I take some consolation in knowing he got paid to do it. So I like to think that as a volunteer, he would not have wanted to be that mean to all of his conservative friends. Um, but so here's what he says. I'm going to read it. It's off the record, so I'm making it on the record. He says there's about 6 points, that Steyer's about 6 points behind Becerra. He's calling it 20 to 26% for round numbers. And he says, well, a lot of people are going to say, well, if he gains 6 points in the remaining ballots, can he catch up? But that's not right. With roughly 3.5 to 4 million ballots left to count, Steyer would need to gain about 7.2 points just to erase his current deficit. But that isn't the whole picture. This isn't a two-way race where every point Steyer gains comes directly from Becerra. It's a multi-candidate field, and if Becerra simply maintains his current share of 26%, Steyer has to make up the existing 6-point gap and then gain enough additional support to pass him. The result, if Becerra holds steady, Steyer would need to win roughly 35% of the remaining ballots to overtake him. If Becerra's share drops to just 22% on the remaining ballots, Steyer would still need to clear 30% to pass him. Think about what that would require. Steyer would have to go from under 20% to over 30% in a tranche of roughly 4 million heavily Democratic late ballots. At the exact same time, Becerra would have to lose a substantial share of the vote with the remaining ballots. So that's the part that makes a Steyer comeback, basically, Paul uses the word impossible. The better argument might be that Steyer could overtake Hilton, but even that would require a world where Steyer is suddenly getting 35% of the remaining vote, while Bianco is simultaneously jumping, Bianco basically doubles what he's getting to 20% to take enough from Hilton. So Hilton finished strong, and Paul attributes that, because I'm going to finish up with what he has to say, uh, to the Trump endorsement and Republicans not wanting to get shut out. So, anyways, I leave all of that to you as the input from somebody who crunches numbers. The key here is not what you know, but what the people you know. So I don't have to know anything, Lance, as long as you know something, and you and I don't need to know anything if Susan actually gets on the horn. So,
I'm trying to hear me. We have audio.
oh, well, you know what? It's a really bad sound. Try talking a little more. Yeah. All right.
Apologize for this. The Wi-Fi out this long.
Yeah, this is not useful. I'm almost tempted to tell you to go to Starbucks, but, um, yeah, as of right now, it's very difficult to understand you. So, so anyways, that's kind of what we have,
Okay,
going on. Yeah, Susan, we cannot understand you at all. The cell signal is so choppy. So I'm not sure what to say. I mean, we're welcome. Keep trying. Maybe wait a few minutes and try again. And then in the meantime, be very frustrated because invariably in the next 5 minutes, Lance and I are going to say things you disagree with, and you won't be able to do anything about it because no one can understand you. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Lance, what are your thoughts about first and foremost overall for Election Day?
It was kind of, I don't know, I want to say anticlimactic in a way because there wasn't a ton of buzz about the Democratic side. I think Steve Hilton was putting out a ton of material and pushes. His surrogates were out there loud and proud and really on, getting the vote out. There was the big surge in LA with this Spencer Pratt, I think, phenomenon, which may have been related and helped out in some way. We can talk about more about that later. But Javier Becerra kind of became I guess that's what we're going to do candidate. And I don't know how long that sticks or lasts, actually. Um, and there's also some legal clouds over his head with the recent indictments of people from his office. So right now, as I see it going forward, the next month or 37 days until we get some sort of final result, the numbers will change. They'll shift here or there. We might see some of the bottom tier people, jockey for a different position. Is Katie Porter going to still beat out Matt Mahan? Is is
The
uh,
movie
is
tribe.
Eric Swalwell going to break into the top 10? Which I think is kind of a funny thing. Did the Barack D. Obama Shaw guy get that 10,000 votes just because of his name? And at what point do the Chad Bianco votes really impact things? It's going to be interesting to watch this whole race, how it goes down for the next little while. But I think the numbers on the governor's side, at least, are pretty much engraved in stone. I don't see that this changes at all for the governor's race. I think we're going to have Becerra versus Hilton in the end.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. I guess what I would say is, um, first of all, I'm always I know people want to get excited for November. One of the big outcomes from the statewide races is that despite the presence of Prop 14, basically almost all of these races, in fact, all of them but one, seem to have sorted on there's going to be a Republican and there's going to be a Democrat going into the general election. And in the one case where that's not the case, which looks to be the insurance commissioner's race, it's a Democrat versus a Democrat. And so, given that situation, um, it's going to be a long fall for Republicans. It's important to remember because I had somebody just recently asking me, well, hey, look, over in Texas, it looks like there's going to be money coming in nationally to help, Talrico go up against Paxton. And so does that mean there's going to be national money coming in to help Hilton, go after Becerra? And I had to kind of splash some cold water and remind them that, different states are in different categories of competitiveness. And when you look at the country and you're trying to figure out states that are analogous to California, think Illinois, think Massachusetts, think Hawaii. We're a very deep blue state. So, as a practical matter, and this is what I actually think is the case, and I don't really want to spend too much time on the governor's race because there's so many other races to cover. But I kind of think about it this way: Steve Hilton is going to have to work his butt off. He's going to have a hard go of it raising as much money. He's going to have to raise as much money as he possibly can, but he's not going to see a lot of big reinforcements coming in to help him unless something happens. And in this case, I kind of look at it as the race between the tortoise and the hare, right? Except that in this case, obviously, I choose that because everyone remembers that in that story, the turtle actually wins, right? But the turtle doesn't win on his own. The turtle wins because the hare gets overconfident. The rabbit takes time off, and the turtle just goes along slow and steady and finishes the race. Well, that's kind of what's going to happen. In order for Steve Hilton to be governor of California, the rabbit's going to have to fall. And the rabbit's, it's not, and I'm not talking about a trip. I'm talking about the rabbit's going to have to trip and bang his head and sit on the ground and wonder what's going on in order for some momentum to pick up. I know you already mentioned, Lance, this situation that's adjacent to Becerra, having to do with his all the machinations to try to fund his chief of staff when he was secretary of HHS. And for those who haven't followed it, the real nickel tour is that Becerra took this appointment to go into the federal administration as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and his chief of staff was coming with him, but couldn't make enough money, and so a scheme was concocted to get money to him by laundering it straight out of the balance of Becerra's campaign committee into a nonprofit, juggle it around, and somehow got it to him. And we're all asked to believe that all of this happened without Becerra knowing about it.
Yeah, no idea.
Right, he had no idea. My concern is that even if he did know about it, and let's say the federal government indicted Becerra for it, the um, I have a concern that what it's gonna end up being is Donald Trump doesn't want Becerra to be governor, so he has invented charges that are not true, and they make it more of the anti-Trump, and it could be that's not enough to knock the rabbit on his feet. I don't know. So, anyways, we'll wait and see what happens. Lance, any other points on the governor's race before we?
No, I think you're right. It's going to be some time before we have a good idea of what trajectory the campaign is going to take. And I think that Donald Trump is aware of this, that if he and or his people at the Department of Justice weigh in, that they can tilt the scales a little bit more than they want to. And frankly, he's got a couple of really smart people over there in that office
Oh yeah, sure he
with
does. Friends of
with
ours.
Harmeet and Bill. I think that they'll be able to give him some good counsel on how to do this. But
Well,
who
and I
knows?
think it's important to remember that entire situation was being investigated by the Department of Justice during the Biden administration before
But
it ever
don't let
became.
the facts get in the way of your politics. So
Right, exactly. So, statewide races, I mean, I guess I would say Steve Hilton got what he wanted, right? Because he's the nominee, and he'll have his whole golden ticket with him. We don't have to go office by office, but I suppose we can. It looks like, Romero is going to be running against Fiona Ma for lieutenant governor. Again, it's even harder for down ticket races because when you start to get down ticket, a lot of people vote based on party label. So
right.
the ability to, and it's all going to depend on whether or not if Hilton can motivate people, maybe that can help down ticket. These are all tough. Herb Morgan is going to be running for controller against who won the controller nod. Help us out here, people. I'm tired.
Oh, geez. I was
I
up
even,
till
I
last
even
night looking too.
I'm gonna pull up my own notes now. You're gonna make me pull up my own notes, although we're gonna get come on, where are all my commenter people who can tell me who's the Democratic nominee for controller? Hold on a minute. So I'm pulling up my
Well,
this makes
it's
this
not
look
Malia Cohen's still the incumbent, correct?
yeah, hold on a minute. Here we go. So my early analysis, just for everybody, I gotta read my own stuff. So all right, yeah. So Malia Cohen is there, and she'll still be there. Don Wagner will be the Republican nominee for Secretary of State. Michael Gates, obviously, is because he had no opponent, is the
Correct.
Republican nominee for Attorney General against Bontagate Bonta. We could talk about that. Actually, I can mention it for a minute. It's kind of the same situation, like we said, with all these races where the Democrats are the rabbits that have to trip for a Republican to have anything happen. Bonta, the Attorney General, is an interesting case because he is one of the people that everybody thought for sure would run for governor, and then he took a pass. But all of my sources told me that one of the reasons he took a pass was he was having trouble consolidating union support because he's got this, he's adjacent, I guess you'd say, to a criminal matter involving the former mayor of Oakland. And if you go back and you look at if you go back and you look at Bonta's campaign reports for the last period, he is a $500,000, close to $500,000 into payments to a Bay Area law firm, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich Rosati, which has a robust white collar crime division. And when asked about it, Bonta said that, well, he's been interviewed on a matter, but he's not like a person of interest and all of that. And unfortunately, in this world, I've known some people that have been questioned by the federal authorities on cases before. And you're talking, if you want to hire a lawyer that's effective and helpful to get you through a deposition or two, that's tens of thousands of dollars for a good one, right? When you start talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, you're now talking about records being requested, records being reviewed, uh, 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 back and forth between attorneys and the DOJ, before you get to all kinds of depositions. I mean, and so I think all that stuff, where there's smoke, there could be fire, and I think the unions weren't willing to risk it. So because of that, if it does blow up, it blows up as he's running for a reelection as attorney general. So we'll see what happens there. I was very sad to see Stacey K. I don't try to pronounce her last name. Stacey K did not make it for
Insurance commissioner.
insurance commissioner, and so we've got we have two Democrats running for that office. We've got uh, uh, Ben Allen is running, and he's got oh god, what's her name? Help me out here, people.
Jane Kim. Yeah, and
Yeah,
Jane Kim, I think, is an unknown quantity to some people. I don't know her well at all. I watched a few forums with her and the rest of the insurance commissioner people. I think honestly, anybody would be an improvement beyond what Ricardo Laro has been on a lot of levels. But but the insurance crisis is way deeper than whatever the commissioner is going to bring. This is something the legislature has got to really think hard about, and going back and addressing some of the really terrible policy we passed was it Proposition 104 years ago. So this is a whole ball of wax that even with the best commissioner, is still going to take some legislative muscle to.
It's very, very limited. 100% for sure. So I invited Matt Klink to come on and join us early. Susan, if you're out there, you have to watch as a guest, because I thought I'd add some firepower to our panel right now. Hi, Matt Klink. How are you?
Great. You guys are killing it. You don't need me right now. I'm content to listen.
Well, we're gonna climb on your shoulders to get over the wall. We need you as the support mechanism. Matt Klink is the owner, proprietor, president of Klink Campaigns. They do a lot of work in Los Angeles County public affairs work, political work, and Matt's forgotten more about the politics of the city of Los Angeles than I even pretend to know. So we haven't gotten to LA. Matt, you may have two windows open. It's unclear, so we may be getting some feedback. You may have the original window that you were watching it with. So
yeah, I closed out of it. That's it.
All right, perfect. So Matt, did you want to say anything about these statewide races before we move on? Because I'm going to do kind of we'll go to LA. We still have an echo.
Really?
Do the people watching hear the echo? Because I can deal with it. Do you hear it, Lance?
Yeah, I did.
All right. So this is once again, Matt, you're causing the echo. You're causing the problem. So solve it.
On it.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move on past the statewide races. There's a few things going on that we want to cover. I'm going to save some of these tax votes till the end, but there's some silver lining of some good news that happened on some critical tax measures around the county. But before we get to that, first of all, Matt, did you have anything else you wanted to weigh on relative to the statewide races before we kind of moved to Los Angeles?
No, is the echo still there?
No, you got it.
Yes. So no, other than I think that the campaign math that you went through for Tom Steyer, I think he underperformed. I mean, he made a bad $220 million investment, and I don't think that he can dig himself out of this hole. I had originally thought that he was going to do a lot better than he did, but he just didn't.
Yeah. I think that what we're going to find out now is that second to Tom Steyer, the most disappointed group of people would be whoever was receiving all the advertising dollars that he would have spent in the general election. It would have been epic. Almost, it would have been almost enjoyable to see the big back and forth, but it would have had, I think, very negative effects on what races Republicans can raise. So when we this is a good transition to talking about what is victory in a deep blue state like California for conservatives, right? Victory is not winning statewide offices. Maybe things line up and you happen to be able to get it done. The chance is not zero, right? Um, but there are a lot of places where Republicans are competitive. There are some parts of California that are red. It's more than the congressional map will show you, by the way. And then there are a lot of places in California where the map is purple, right? This is where you have all these kind of competitive races for assembly and senate on the margins. And so having a robust top of the ticket on the Republican side is very critical to make sure that Republicans turn out and vote. If you've got a choice between battery acid and rat poison at the top of the ticket from the perspective of a Republican, that may be the only incentive you need to be like, why should I bother to vote? In fact, maybe I should spend my time looking for a U-Haul, right? So because of that, it does matter that there is a Republican at the top of the ticket for governor. And I know somebody's already asked about the voter ID prop. And whether or not it will drive Republicans to the polls in November. It's kind of an interesting question. Is it? And maybe you can answer this, Matt. Does the presence of the voter ID initiative drive more Republicans to the poll to help Hilton, or does the presence of Hilton drive more Republicans to the polls to help the voter ID initiative?
Yeah, I think that having Hilton on the ballot will drive Republicans to turn out and vote. I think it's a top of the ticket is what's going to drive people. The biggest concern, frankly, that if it were a Steyer and Becerra election, was what incentive do Republicans have to come out to vote at all, and that affects everything up and down the ballot across the state. Because I mean, look, Steyer has gone so far left he could never claw back to the middle to even get anybody who considers themselves even a loose moderate. And Becerra is, I mean, listen to his speech last night. I mean, he's decidedly left of center. So, yeah, Steyer is going to draw Republicans into the race, and I think that it's an opportunity to perform better and campaign to those moderates who don't want a far left candidate like Xavier Becerra.
Yeah, well, so we'll see where that all lands. There were some interesting races around the state. I don't want to dominate everything, but before we get to all those interesting races, Matt, why don't you take us through what you think so far of the results in the City of Angels where you reside? Starting with the mayor and some of these council seats, and then we'll kind of go from there.
So I mean, look, the most obvious one, and believe it or not, the mayor's race got more national coverage than the governor's race. And I think it's all attributable to one person, and that's Spencer Pratt. You know, we were joking around behind in the green room last night on TV. Can you imagine what a snoozer the mayor's race would have been if Spencer Pratt didn't get in? You would have had Karen Bass arguing with Nithya Raman about how to make the bureaucracy work better. I mean, which is as about exciting as watching paint dry. So, bottom line, where their results are right now is Mayor Bass is in first with about 37% of the vote. Spencer Pratt is in second with 30% of the vote. Nithya is in third with roughly 21%. I was talking to some number crunchers. There are about 280 outstanding ballots, 280,000 outstanding ballots in the city of Los Angeles. And the consensus is that the 40,000 vote cushion for Spencer Pratt is almost certainly enough to propel him into the runoff against Karen Bass. So
Right.
that's a big deal.
It's kind of that same math like with the governor's race, where all those outstanding Democratic ballots, if they were all going to go to Nithya Raman, that'd be one thing, but they're not. They're going to divide up, and Bass is going to get a big chunk of those. So
Yes.
Bass's numbers will move up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Bass
Raman's
will move
numbers will
up.
move up a little
Raman will
bit.
move up probably more. And Spencer's going to get some of those votes. So look, this is the race that the Bass people want. I guarantee you that Spencer Pratt will be branded, Donald Trump's, second cousin twice removed. And Spencer Pratt's task is, that it's so funny that the status quo political consultants were like, Spencer Pratt now needs to outline his detailed positions on issues. And I go, no, if he does that, he's going to get smoked. Nobody cares about a 15-point plan to end homelessness. Spencer Pratt needs to be, unconventional. He needs to continue to chipe in at the status quo, and he needs to just make it evident that, Karen Bass can tell you she has the solutions, but she's had 4 years to try it. And, saying that she didn't get it right, but she will, trust me, now she will, is not a winning message for her.
Right. So the way I see it, and then I'm going to, just so you mentally prepare, Lance, I'm going to pivot over to you in a minute to get your take. But it just seems to me, first of all, Phil from California Underground, which, by the way, if you've not been to YouTube over to California Underground, you need to be there, because Phil does a lot of great content on California politics. But he comments that we would have been deprived of more great AI Pratt videos. We'll see a lot more AI Pratt videos over the next 5 months. And then big, bold prediction. You know how when you're at the cutting edge of new technology, right? You get a little bit of time. My prediction in the fall is that we're going to see an explosion of AI videos that is going to be entertaining in almost every race that there is, as people have figured out with just some very small subscriptions online, you can create amazing content like Pratt and Pratt's supporters have done. But what I was going to say is that in this mayor's race, I think that we're going to see two strategies get employed at the same time. One, I think you're going to see Operation Contrition from the mayor. She is going to humble herself a little bit, which is not her strong suit. And she is going to, as a candidate, recognize that, she just had almost 2/3 of Angelenos that voted in June choose someone besides her. She's going to be humble, and she's going to talk about how she can and will do better. And then the unions, with a massive amount of money, are going to start out on the Prop 50 campaign. It's going to be Spencer Pratt, Donald Trump. Spencer Pratt, Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
Over and over and over again. And Spencer Pratt is going to be spending all of his time trying to distance himself, while the unions are going to employ the same tactic and look for all kinds of amazing AI videos of Spencer Pratt with Donald Trump all over the place that don't have any reality, but that's going to be the AI revenge, right?
Yeah.
This is my edgy prediction for the mayor's race. Lance, what do you think on the LA mayor's race?
Yeah, I don't think it's edgy at all. I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen. It's Donald Trump derangement syndrome is endemic, and these people all just they live for it. But that said, I think there's two pieces here. When
Well, it's
Spencer
not even the derangement syndrome. I mean, the reality is, go look, the approval numbers for the president are in the tank. And so it's a legitimate strategy. If every undecided voters now in America feel as strongly against the president right now as Democrats did about the president at the beginning of the president's term. So the
I don't
president has
disagree.
to,
I don't
president has
disagree
to
with
turn
any of
that
that.
around. Yeah.
I don't disagree with any of that. All I'm saying
Although
is
they do have Trump derangement syndrome.
yeah, all I'm saying is that that's kind of that's a fallback. I expect that that's going to happen. I
Right.
think what will distinguish
It's going
Pratt,
to happen to Hilton.
and it's going to happen to both of them, right? It happened to me. All of a sudden, I'm arm in arm with Donald Trump in all these campaign commercials in 2022. Never met the man. So it is what it is. We put that aside. But there's two things that really impressed me about Spencer Pratt. Matt's point about him doing a 15-point plan and ending homelessness, of course, it's not going to happen. But he has been very cogent on just basic, simple things to get it done. And it's the no duh sort of approach. And when he first joined the race, I was actually kind of, like everybody else, flummoxed about how he was going to navigate this, because everybody just assumed that Rick Caruso was going to be the anointed one to do the skin. But Rick dumps out because he can't decide if he wants to do the governor's race or the LA mayor's race. Um, and you had a void there. And so Spencer Pratt jumps into this void almost unwittingly. I mean, the guy is making his announcements in, shorts and a t-shirt with a hat on and those black sneakers. Like that's not how you necessarily go out and campaign for, mayor. But he also has a legitimate gripe here. But he's also, through his whole process and early in Hollywood, he knows how the media works almost better than anybody else. So the Harvey Levin stuff, the all the interviews he's done, the Bill Maher episode he just did this last week, I thought, to me, that was the inside peek about what his campaign's going to look like. It was the first pants then shoes approach, right? When Maher's like, well, you got to think about all these other things. He goes, no, we got to get homeless people off the street, needles out of the parks, poop not on the sidewalks, and make sure our kids and our families can be safe. Until that all happens, I don't care about anything else, at all.
It's like the hierarchy of needs. It's like you really would like to have a chocolate sundae for dessert, but if you don't even have a house to live in, it's hard to think about anything else.
100%. And I think he hits that very viscerally with a lot of people, and his availability to the public is far surpassing that of Karen Bass's. And this morning I was watching some of his reaction. He's willing to do a debate every week because I think he enjoys that sort of thing.
He said every Friday he would debate Karen Bass, and the likelihood of that happening is 0.
Yeah, so let's talk. What else did you see out of LA? I think I saw some very interesting results in the city attorneys.
I was just going there. Yeah, so the incumbent Heidi Feldstein Soto had some significant headwinds facing her. She is currently running third behind a woman named Marissa Roy, who is a Democratic Socialist candidate, and then a really good candidate, in my opinion, John McKinney, who is a deputy district attorney who he puts away bad people. Exactly the type of person that you want in the city attorney's role.
I think the similarities modeling wise between him and your county district attorney are very similar. And I think that I could very easily see even, reasonable Democrats saying, and I think McKinney may be a Democrat, I don't know. But the point being, there's a point at which you kind of go, with everything crazy going on in Los Angeles, maybe the people that are in charge of our law enforcement ought not be part of the problem.
Yeah, we don't need a George Soros prosecutor in Los Angeles.
Right. Exactly. And when I watched an interview with John, I mean, he was very clear. Job number one is we got to get these homeless people off the streets.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of excuses from the industrial homeless complex who have a vested interest in not doing that. Because guess what happens when there aren't any more housing challenged people? It's hard to justify the billions of dollars flowing through to all these nonprofits to care for a community that isn't there anymore. What did we see in city council races? Did my parents get Tracy Park back as their councilwoman?
Yeah, in fact, Tracy Park, I think, is in a really, really good place here. She is going to win outright. She won't even face a runoff election. She's just such a great candidate. So look, I think that the races that I was watching,
when I watched Tracy Park, by the way, I think to myself, okay, there are no Republicans in LA. So she's the closest thing there is to a Republican on the city council. When the city council voted by a 14-0 to say, let's advance a policy that looks at whether or not the police should be enforcing traffic laws in the city, right? There was one council member who figured out she didn't need to be voting for that crap. And it was Tracy Park, right? So literally standing out as the only real adult in the whole room, at least on that kind of progressive craziness.
Yep. No, she's a good one. She's a good communicator. She is perfect for that district. She can handle the crazies in Venice, and she can deal with the tragedies in the tragedy in the Pacific Palisades. So I'm glad. It just shows that in politics, sometimes that good things do happen to good people. The thing that I was also looking at is, so 4 years ago, after Nithya Raman got elected to the council as really the first Democratic Socialist candidate, there were two other candidates, Eunices Hernandez and Hugo Soto Martinez, that were on the ballot, and they were up for reelection this time. And right now it looks like that Eunices she's cleared that 50% threshold. And then I'm just looking at the most current numbers, and Hugo has cleared the 50% threshold. So they will win outright. And the concern that has is that all of those little DSA, socialists that come in from Portland, Oregon and Seattle and other places, they want to spread their socialist seed in Los Angeles. Now, because these races are free and clear, they're going to go to other districts, the city attorney's race being one, and then the 9th council district, which is the current Price seat, which is to the south and east of Los Angeles. And they want to make that a DSA takeover seat so that then if all the cards fall into place, now you have 4 members of the 15-member city council that are followers of democratic socialism. So, and that just yields crazy in terms of future votes on a lot of things like public safety, like homelessness, like the ridiculousness about not enforcing traffic stops, craziness on, for that hurts landlords and how's the city pay for attorneys for illegal immigrant tenants. I mean, just stupid things like that. So those races are important. That's so bottom line is that the progressive, like not even Democrat, the progressive side of Los Angeles, it is real. It is not going anywhere. And I think Nithya, even though she's a DSA candidate and ran for mayor and finished 3rd, she was just a bad candidate for mayor.
Well, and let's get real here, right? It's not like Karen Bass, while she is the mayor and has settled into a very comfortable, corrupt relationship with the special interests in the city, which she knows keeps her in office. When she goes home at night, she's reading the Little Red Book. She's not, I mean, this is somebody who physically has been to Cuba multiple times, lamented the passing of Fidel Castro. And when she was in Congress, had one, if I would argue that she was tied for who knows who else for the most liberal voting record in Congress. So it's not like the mayor of the city represents, she's not like a Tracy Park.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think that also cut into Nithya Raman quite a bit.
Well,
is that there are plenty of progressives that, I mean, and look, Mamdani, the big figurehead over there in New York, didn't endorse because he knew, hey, with all due respect, Karen Bass is one of us. Right. And so I think out of respect for the DSA, he didn't endorse Bass over Raman, but it's pretty telling that when the poster child for the national DSA movement doesn't weigh in, that kind of tells you something. So,
well, and here's the part that really frustrates. It certainly frustrates me as a lifelong Californian and someone who's lived in Los Angeles most of my adult life. The business community endorsed Karen Bass. All of the mainstream business organizations, they were so proud of themselves that they came together and they all endorsed Karen Bass, in part because they feared Nithya Raman. And, and I was like, what did the business community get for this endorsement? And they're like, she's going to meet with us when we want her to. And I'm like, ooh, good.
Oh, yeah, that's really good. Right. So, well, I'm sure while they do that, they're all busy forwarding around the viral Pratt videos to everyone and knowing, hey, this stuff's really good. And to be fair, and maybe as a closing point on LA for now, we may swing back in a little bit when we talk about ballot measures. But to be fair, this is a big math problem for Spencer Pratt come November. It's one thing to get into the runoff with Karen Bass, but raise your hand if you think that the whacked out Angelinos that voted for batshit crazy Nithya Raman are now in a runoff going to vote for common sense Spencer Pratt. And I think it's a real hard argument to make, because while you can say, hey, these are people who said, we don't want Karen Bass, these are people that didn't want Karen Bass because she was seen as not liberal enough.
Well, and let's double down on that. How is she even a candidate after letting the city burn down? Like,
Yeah.
how is that even? So yes, Los Angeles residents just like self-flagellation. I get it, but it is going to be tough for Spencer. I don't think people took him seriously until the last week or so. Does that change a lot as it gets more into the
Oh,
weeds? And
sure.
I would
Yeah,
love to
but
see a one-on-one with him lost.
it will change a bit, but remember,
Right.
this is the city that's 18% Republican, and the turnout for the June election is gonna pale in significance to the turnout in
Well, there's still four and a
November,
half
and the
million votes that are outstanding in LA. So
right,
if they all come
exactly.
in, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, Karen Bass, if I had to read the tea leaves, if you're Karen Bass, you do your one obligatory debate with Spencer Pratt, and you
And that's it, and
completely
otherwise you let the
completely
unions just
ignore
go
them.
Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump,
Exactly.
all the way
Yep.
through to November.
Because all of
Okay,
her
so let
liberal followers are gonna endorse her continuation of the status quo.
all right. So we're in the second half of the program, and here's what I want to cover in the second half so that you guys can help me so we pace ourselves. I want to go through and highlight certain legislative races around the state, mostly congressional races, but we can cover a few state legislative races of significance. I want to make sure that we're covering some significant ballot measure victories, and then kind of give an opportunity for each of you two to have kind of a recap at the end. And so I'm going to just kind of dive into it. But I will say this. So I've been dialoguing with Susan Shelley from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, who was supposed to be with us. And so the bad news is it didn't work out. And this program limits me to only having two guests at a time. And so now Susan's squared away. But the new plan with Susan is tomorrow morning, she and I are going to record a podcast, and then I'm going to put that up. So all the notes, everything she's put together to talk about her thoughts on the election, she and I are going to have a talk, and it's going to be available either tomorrow or Friday for people to take in. And she's extraordinarily insightful. And so I think everyone's going to enjoy that. So when we talk about races, I wanted to start, Lance, by throwing it over to you. What in the heck is going on with the 6th congressional district? And,
Well,
and
well,
maybe
we thought
find
Prop
people on what
50.
that is. I know what that is by number, and you do, but
Yeah, we thought that the Prop 50 was going to throw a stake in the heart of Kevin Kiley, who'd been representing the exterior of Sacramento, Placer County, that area. His district was divided six ways till Sunday by your good friend Paul Mitchell, and the whole idea was really to get rid of Kevin
my
Kiley.
frenemy.
Your frenemy, right? And so Kevin is a really smart dude, and I don't know that I thought his strategy of going independent, of leaving the Republican Party, at least as registration, still caucusing with Republicans, but being open to caucusing with Democrats was a wise move. But the area he drafted is severely left of center, and yet in the primary, um, it's him followed by the Republican nominee, who's pretty much a no name, because the party didn't have anybody other than, what Kylie was before he left. And then Richard Pan, who everybody knows was one of the worst politicians to run for the state legislature in decades. He's one of the worst.
Oh, I have all,
The deep bench.
my most poignant memories of Doctor Richard Pan
Yeah, don't forget
were,
the word.
were basically straight out of the Nazi regime, right? As he overlorded healthcare policy during the COVID disaster in California, and his basic position was, "I don't care where you are, you should be near no one." He was Mister Don't go to the beach. Like,
Yes.
what more of an open place can you go to get outside, have some health, get some sun, and not be too close to other people? Oh, but we don't wanna do that, right? So,
Well, pretty much
yeah,
everything he said was completely wrong, and yet
right.
he was then sustained by the glitterati of the left. Um, there is a very slim chance. Again, we have 37 days to find these numbers, and it's pretty tight right now. But he's in third place right now. There's a very small chance that he gets kept out and that Callie will hold his seat in the end of this whole thing. But
Yeah,
who
we'll have to
knows?
see what happens. We know that the lion's share of the remaining ballots are more liberal, and so
Yeah, right.
that likely means Pan will climb out, but it doesn't necessarily mean, because again, all those votes are splitting amongst all of the candidates that were running there. They don't all go to Pan, and
Well,
so
and when you get really intramural about it, it's Yolo County swings to the left, and yet those have swung towards Kylie, which I'm surprised about. Sacramento County is more left, like you said, probably more votes. But in his home turf of Placer, those results still are going to be fairly robust as well. So
Right.
I don't know, there's a chance. We'll see what happens in that second place
Right.
Republican in that race.
All right, we're going to keep moving. I'm just going to put out there without comment that I think it was with nobody's surprise that we have a new member of Congress heading to Washington D.C. from the state of Jefferson. Right? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, he's my congressman. He's my assemblyman right now, but soon to be my congressman when Doug LaMalfa passed away, unfortunately. So
This is James Gallagher for the people that aren't looking. He
James
was
Gallagher
before.
stepped up and is running for a seat, was pretty much anointed by all the right people and endorsed by everybody here, and won the special election outright against Mike McGuire, the former president pro tem of the Senate. Mike McGuire is, up North Coast uh, Democrat
Yeah.
who's had a lot of political power and blew his opponents in the special election out of the water under the current lines. The new
Right.
Prop 50 lines, it's going to be a lot closer for sure. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be close. It's so. What happens is that James Gallagher just got elected to finish out Congressman LaMalfa's term in a district that was, as currently drawn, Donald Trump won by double digits, and now James Gallagher, as an incumbent, has to run in a district that Kamala Harris won by double digits. It's going to be very, 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 very hard to win that seat. It's not impossible. Lord knows Doug was getting ready to do it and raising money, and his plan was to try to hold that territory. And I think James has that same drive. And so let's move over to San Francisco. It's kind of odd for me to say this, and so I have to tell this to people watching this program that this is San Francisco speak. That Scott Wiener, as a candidate for Congress, represents the more business friendly side of Democrats in Sacramento. It's hard to tell because he is crazy. I think he may get that label because like he's pro housing, right? And that may be what really gives him the label. He's not a NIMBY, that's for sure. But we're talking a guy that wears leather chaps and bear shirts and goes out with a choker on his neck with a chain connected to it, right? The guy's got a lot of extreme behaviors, and you couldn't have anybody who is more fixated on opposing allowing biological men to participate in women's sports and all those kinds of things. He is the front runner now. As expected, he got the most votes to succeed Nancy Pelosi, but about a week out, or so, maybe 2 weeks, Nancy Pelosi endorsed Supervisor Connie Chen from the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, who came in second place, but pretty far back. I mean, I think as I recall, I'm not looking at the numbers right in front of me, but as I recall, Wiener was in the low 40s. We'll have to look again. It was in the low 40s, and you compare that to Chen, who I think was in the low 20s. So we're going to see that one move forward. I think, and when we talk about other House races that are of interest, we were all looking to see who was going to be running against Congressman Valadao in his reelection, and there was a big Democrat internecine, if that's the right word, battle to see who would win there. And I think it still may technically be too close to call over there. And
The progressive has jumped up above the kind of the moderate center, Jasmine Baines, who's been in the assembly.
right. So I'll call that a more rare progressive win this cycle in California, because it feels like a lot of progressives did not fare well, especially in state legislative races. We're not going to get into all the state legislative races, but kind of making our way down the state on the congressional stuff. And again, you guys chime in if there's some race that I'm talking about that you want to speak to that I'm not talking to. But as we go down the state, the next House race that I would probably bring up, because I think it's very, very interesting, is California 40, which is a stone's throw from where I live. This is where the aforementioned Paul Mitchell gleefully wrote two Republicans into one seat, Ken Calvert and Young Kim into one seat. And I have predicted the entire way through, and my prediction was validated, that this would actually be a fight that would go on to November. And it seems very, very likely. Ken Calvert had an extremely strong showing. Easily came in first. Young Kim, I think, is about 6 or 7 points ahead of the nearest Democrat. She's down in the 20s. So, you go into the general election, and my kind of conventional wisdom has always been Calvert would be the strongest in June because, the Democrats will all be sucking up the Democrat votes. And, Calvert represents most of that district right now. He's got the whole Riverside County side as opposed to the Orange County side. But then young Kim, if it went to a runoff, might have a little bit more of an advantage because she is more moderate and might be able to appeal to those Democrats that don't decide not to vote, right? Like, if there's any Democrat that says, "Hey, I want a more reasonable Republican," they may go after that. But frankly, Calvert's win was so big that it's going to be really hard for Kim. It's not impossible by any stretch. She's in the runoff. There's only two of them, but I think Calvert even took the Orange County part of the district. That's really tough for young Kim. So we'll just kind of see where it goes. And then the only other House race that I thought was really worth talking about was down in San Diego, because there was some question about whether or not um, we all knew that Jim Desmond, the San Diego County Supervisor, who I I wanna say I saw him here, that he's here with us today. I don't know if he's still here, but at one point he logged in. If you're here, say hi, Jim. Jim's nomination to be the Republican in that district, I think everybody felt was pretty likely. We didn't know which Democrat was gonna move forward. And so, in that particular case, Marnie von Wilpert looks to be the Democrat. And there was some question for a while about whether the Democrats would fight so much that the second tier Republican might actually move forward. So we will see what happens there. Any other House races that you guys want to bring up? I don't, I'm the only other one near you. I think it's worth noting, Matt, that there was some talk that some upstart running against Brad Sherman might actually get somewhere, and that guy completely flamed out.
Yeah, it just goes to show you that that's my race. That's in my district. Yeah, his name was Jake Levine, Mel Levine's son. If you may, we're going, I'll date everybody.
Sure.
Mel Levine was a mainstay in Congress for many years, and Brad Sherman just continues to amaze. I'm not a fan. He doesn't do much for the district, but because he's on foreign affairs committee. But I'm telling you, the guy that he knocked off Howard Berman when they combined districts, I don't know, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and he continues to amaze. It's shocking. So, yeah.
Well, there you have it. So, I did want to bring up a couple of state Senate races that I was watching because I thought they were interesting. And of course, remember, you're watching a show that's I'm a Republican. It's come from that perspective, so I'm not diminishing the fact that there are also very cool Democrat intra-battle fighting battles that reporting on. I can tell you that broadly reading about it, it seems like kind of generally the more understand the qualification, the more reasonable Democrats were winning in a lot of those primaries. When I say that, ones that were backed by more business interests seem to be doing pretty well in those. But the two Republican state Senate primaries that I was looking at, one of them I actually talked about last week on my live podcast. That's Senate District 4. This is a district in the northern Central Valley. It's a district that President Trump won in his last election by significant double digits, very ruby red seat. And then in 2022, four viable Republicans split up the Republican vote. And that led to two Democrats coming in first and second. And then the winner, of course, ultimately was Marie Alvarado Gill, who then, after she got elected to the state Senate as a Democrat in this very Trumpy seat, magically re-registered to become a Republican. And this is where you get a difficult situation because I have friends of mine who I wholeheartedly believe in their ability to judge people who think that she legitimately kind of shifted over because she was being so harassed by the Democrats, and so she re-registered because she needed a home. But it's also pretty hard to not, step back and say, well, she couldn't get reelected as a Democrat, so of course she was going to become a Republican. But either way, so she was campaigning, and then, up in Sacramento, Republicans are starved for any kind of a victory of any sort, right? So immediately it's like, hey, let's get her to re-register. It'll be a big win. And there was a press conference and talking about how great it is that a Democrat became a Republican. Meanwhile, everybody, like, the joke is in. Of course she did, right? Um, but in the part of that process, she was endorsed by a whole bunch of the establishment of Republicans up there. When I say a whole bunch, I mean, what are there, 9 or 10 Republicans total? They all kind of fit in the phone booth on the state Senate side. Great. I'm not disparaging them because I think it takes a special kind of resolve to be in the super minority in Sacramento. So God bless them all. But that doesn't mean there's very many of them. But I know Senate Republican leader Brian Jones has been strongly backing Alvarado Gil. And as of right now, Alvarado Gil is losing that primary, as it were. I'd have to pull up the stats right in front of me to see the latest numbers. But she was running against Alexandra Duarte, who is the wife of the one-term wonder. Her husband won a term in Congress for one term, and she's an almond farmer. They have a lot of, as I recall from talking to the congressman when he was running the first time, they've got kind of a bunch of different businesses, but they're all in the ag space. And so she raised a very, very respectable amount of money. And so far it appears to be paying off because she's got about a 5-point lead over Alvarado Gil. So, and again, this race is not an issue in November. This is a very Trumpy red seat. So however this thing resolves itself, the Democrat, who's the top vote getter, the guy named is Jaron Brandon, he got his 39% of the vote, and he will get that 39% come November. So interesting. And then the other one, which I find to be infinitely more interesting, was SD 40. And Lance is chuckling because he's probably anticipating how I'm going to frame this one. But so I'm not sure.
I'll pray for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure what words I would use to adequately and completely describe the phenomena that is Carl DeMaio. Right. So Carl's my friend. Carl is a lot. Right. Carl has everything from OCD to ADD to you name it. All of that having been said, Carl works very, very hard to elect conservatives around the state. I mean, the guy rallies Republicans everywhere, rallies people to the cause everywhere, raises money, spends money, but he's very controversial down in San Diego. He does not play well with the establishment down there, and the establishment does not play well with him. He has no problems endorsing against their candidates. They all certainly, and I should say, I mean, the establishment Republicans got together with the unions and spent, I want to say, $1 million to try to keep Carl out of the state assembly 2 years ago. This year, he kind of sailed into a reelection. But this race kind of moved over now to where the aforementioned Senate Republican leader, Brian Jones, is termed out. So his Republican leaning, pretty Republican state Senate seat is up. And so half of that district is represented by Carl DeMaio, right? A big chunk of it, right? So Carl, I'm not sure if Christy Bruce Lane ran and Carl supported her or if Carl recruited her, but Christy's run for office before and she staked out, she's running as Carl's candidate. And when I say Carl's candidate, I would say she was running as the kind of like our very prototypical hardcore ideologue candidate. Like, I'm going to go up to Sacramento and I'm taking on the corruption and the assholes and no one's going to keep me down. And I'm going to be very strident. I guess that's what I would say, right? She's going to be the strident conservative up there, which I could argue when you're in the super minority, God bless, right? Carl does a very effective job on the floor of the state assembly, speaking truth to power. We see the videos all the time. But his opponent, Ed Musgrove, is on a local city council up there, also very conservative fellow, generally, but much more moderate in his temperament, right? And he was the chosen successor of Brian Jones. And then kind of conservative and party the party establishment circled up behind him, and it's not even close. While the Democrats got the same 44% that she's likely to have the whole way through, maybe it goes up a little more. Bruce Lane has 30%, and Musgrove's at 25.9%. Now, are there enough votes outstanding that could change? Yes, but now you get into kind of a Paul Mitchell-esque analysis of how much the numbers would actually have to actually change with the remainder of the vote for him to make up that much distance. And so I have a hard time. I haven't done a winners and losers of the week yet. Everyone will, I'm sure, look at that. I have a hard time not putting Brian Jones on the list when we get there. And I say that Brian's a friend of mine for a long time. And I always say on my winners and losers list, sometimes I feel like I should be on the list, right? The winners and losers list aren't who's John's friends and who are John's enemies.
As long as you keep me and Matt off that list, I think we're fine. So
right. As long as you call balls and strikes, right? And so I've had Gavin Newsom as a winner. He's a total loser in the broad sense. But you know what? If you have a great week, you have a great week, right? It happens sometimes. Now, Newsom's been the most prolific loser on the list as well. So I feel, so anyway, so those two state Senate races I thought were interesting. Matt, what happened with the tax increases? There was a countywide ballot ER, and then there's some tax stuff at the city.
Yeah, so I have to admit I was involved with the No on ER campaign, and it was a slog to raise money.
You don't have to admit. You could just say I'm very proud to announce that I was involved.
Well, yeah. So it's right now it's 53 no.
He doesn't know how to become a winner, Lance.
Yes, right.
If you want to be a winner, you have to say, well, clearly a winner of the week would be somebody who helped defeat a tax increase.
Yeah. So what we have subsequently found out is that the hospitals kicked in almost $9 million to try to pass this. Because they would get back a heck of a lot more than $9 million. 5347 is where it is right now. It's probably still a little early to declare victory yet, just because there could be as many as 700,000 votes uncounted in LA County. But again, it goes back to that funky campaign math where with each report that comes in, the number of votes that they need gets higher and higher from a percentage standpoint. So, look, I think we feel pretty good. People are just fed up with taxes in general, and another half-cent sales tax on the heels of a recently passed half-cent sales tax. I mean, in a city like Lancaster, the sales tax would have been 11.75%. I mean, that's just criminal.
Crazy.
Yep. So, and then look in the city, there are some other crazy taxes that they have. They were going to try to tax. This is my favorite ballot measure of the cycle. So they were going to try to tax unlicensed cannabis shops in the city of Los Angeles. Now, mind you, these shops are operating illegally and haven't registered with the city. So they're by definition already not paying taxes and breaking the law. And the city, instead of just cracking down, they said, we're going to show them, we're going to pass a ballot measure to tax them. So I have it. Let me see if I can grab real quick where it is. Give me 1 second. But yeah, I haven't followed them that closely. But let's see. So I do think, look, there's a transit occupancy tax, which is
that was going down when I saw.
Yeah, which is surprising because generally those are viewed as quote unquote free taxes because residents.
Right, don't tax me, tax the guy behind the tree.
Correct, exactly. And then the other one was a travel agent tax. I find it interesting, an online travel company tax. So
that one would look like it was passing, right?
Yeah, I think it likely will.
All right. So I think it's worth mentioning, as we look at election day, Republicans have to try to find victories where we can, right? In a state like California. So I think it's worth noting that down in San Diego, there was an occupancy tax measure. They wanted to tax vacant property. It was resoundingly defeated. right? You had Measure ER in Los Angeles to raise money to offset cuts from the federal government on healthcare subsidies. That was resoundingly, or is in the process of being defeated. You had a similar tax in Contra Costa County. It was overwhelmingly defeated. And then the craziest one, because I could not have told you there were adults in the room in the city of San Francisco, but their Measure D, which was to tie taxation for a business to the compensation of a CEO, that's losing by over 10 points right now in San Francisco. Now, there was some other measure that I'm not familiar with that would have decreased some business taxes. That's also losing. So, people in San Francisco, but I'll take any pro-taxpayer victory that comes out of San Francisco is worthwhile. I mean, I think that if you object to how much money a CEO is making, that's when you stop buying their products. That's, you have an opportunity, if you don't like what a company does or how they're operating, to speak by not buying their products rather than using the kind of the coercive power of government in the way they want to use it. But anyways, at one point, I did a column talking about the layers of taxation in San Francisco, and it's dozens and dozens and dozens of ballot measures passed over generations have led to, like, I mean, if you wanted to start like a bagel shop in San Francisco, you'd probably need a tax compliance officer on your payroll. I mean, it's really, really difficult to kind of figure that out, and so I do think that those are all positive results, and maybe they augur well for, because it's worth mentioning that, the real drive is going to be in the fall, right? Where you have this billionaire tax that's going to qualify for the ballot, which isn't really a tax. It's a wealth taking, right? 5% of the net worth of billionaires. But here's my great theory. My theory is this, because when I see the numbers on the billionaire tax and it's sitting in the mid, it's definitely low enough that a very expensive effort by those that oppose it, and they'll have plenty of money, is likely to bring it down. But I have this theory, which is I may be a fan of the billionaire tax and the Healthcare West Union of SEIU that's promoting it, because I think that the effort to take down the billionaire tax is actually going to take down the sleeper tax, which is the extension of the state income tax, which the CTA is pushing right behind it. And you drive enough of an anti-tax sentiment on that November ballot, and you're going to see bond measures go down, tax measures go down, and all because of some, I don't know this guy who's the president of the SEI Union West, but he doesn't play well with other people, and he's very obstinate, and he sees things his own way. And I don't think he's somebody, because there's always a negotiation process. Can you get something off the ballot? That guy doesn't negotiate well. I mean, he's really takes his take my marbles and go home, or he'll say this: well, my workers were going to benefit to the tune of, $80 million from the billionaire tax. So if you want it off the ballot, how's Governor Newsom going to get me, I don't know, 30, 40 billion dollars, which doesn't exist, right? And so we'll see what happens, but I'm kind of torn. I think I'd like to see it stay on the ballot. I mean, with all due respect to the billionaires that have to fight it, because I think that's the best way to cause the whole group of tax increases to just go down in flames, is going to be a massive effort to cause voters to say, because the theme, if you're fighting the billionaire tax, is, good Lord, let's talk about how they're wasting the money they have now. And when you start doing a massive statewide campaign exposing the waste, fraud, and abuse in Sacramento, ranging from high-speed rail crap all the way through, all the money spent on homeless, when you talk about that to the level that the billionaires can afford to talk about that in California, you are going to sour the appetite of voters, especially swing voters and moderate Democrats, towards, like, they're right. I'm not approving any taxes until they get their act together. So I don't know if either of you have any thoughts on that. I obviously.
Yeah, I just really quick. I mean, when I started the state legislature 20 some years ago with Tom McClintock, we probably thought 10, 15, maybe 20% of the government programs were waste, fraud, or abuse. But the more and more I'm watching over the last few years, and again, I worked for Governor Schwarzenegger's Department of Finance. I know the numbers to build the state budget. The increases that we've had in the state budget have been astronomical underneath this current governor. And I would say a vast majority of the funds that we spend are complete cronyism, waste, and not just fraud, but all out absolute grift. And we have a massive problem that no tax increase in the world is going to fix. So at some level, I think the 4D chess about whether or not we have this billionaires tax on the ballot next year is going to be interesting for the other ones. But California's got to step back and be serious. And I know this is hard for most people to do, but they've got to ask, what else do we need to fund at the state level that is actually going to benefit us at the local level? And pretty much no more state services are going to be of any benefit at all. And so we've got to have some sort of conversation, but that's the think tank guy in me, not the political guy.
Right. There you go. All right. Well, as we're kind of cruising into the last 10 minutes, first of all, I want to one of our august commenters, Brenna Gutierrez. Thanks for being with us, Brenna. Um, asked about whether there were any insights into the CD13 race. This is where Adam Gray is seeking his second term, and now Kevin Lincoln has emerged as the Republican nominee. This is one of those situations where I'll be just candid, Brenna. That district is not currently on the kind of list that Republicans are looking at nationally. Republicans' first priority is obviously they've got a bunch of incumbents they need to defend on what promises to be a tough national year for them. And so I think really what happens is that Kevin Lincoln now has to spend the next few months working his butt off to put himself in a position so that if the president can turn around some of his numbers, which is questionable, especially since we're depending on batshit crazy people in Iran to be helpful in that regard, right? Um, you know, if Republicans can expand their playing field, which is a big if in this year, Kevin Lincoln's got to make that district attractive because in order to defeat somebody it's a must-win seat for the Democrats. They have to win it. And so they'll put whatever resources are there. And so for Republicans to be contesting it, it means that a bunch of things that have to happen outside of Kevin's control. And then the one thing that's in Kevin's control is he has to hoof it and go out there and raise enough money so that people feel like, we can add to what he's done and win the seat. But it's just tough, right? It's a tough environment for Republicans looking to pick off incumbent Democrats. It's tough. So, and of course, that's a Prop 50 seat that was rejuggled a bit to help Gray. They put more of Gray's original legislative district into the new Prop 50 lines there to help bolster him. So we will see what happens. But I know Kevin Lincoln. He's a tenacious campaigner, a very articulate person. We'll just kind of see how it goes, right? So, as a California Republican Party Vice Chairman John Park points out in the comments, 53 Dem, 45 GOP votes in that district so far. So it's not crazy, but again, Republicans are going to first be focused on holding seats before they get to expand. Lance, what closing comments would you like to make about your observations from last night?
Well, I'm glad that the national scene was finally paying attention to the mayoral race, but what they should be watching is the next steps in 2028 as Gavin really ramps up his campaign for president. And are we going to see more of the same over the last 6 months of his tenure that we've seen in the last 7.5 years that he's completely, crapped on the state? That's going to be, I think, a story that will really be the story for the rest of the year, especially as we wrap up this last legislative session and a budget that's massively misaligned. Whoever the next governor comes in is going to have some fundamentally deep and hard conversations about spending, whether or not this billionaire tax passes. And at a local level, we didn't talk at all about like places like LUSD, which is a 10 or an 11.5 billion-dollar unfunded liability down there. We have local jurisdictions
and growing with every jury verdict.
And you have enrollment declining dramatically out there. So I think watching what happens also at the state levels, we have a conversation about how much power the state superintendent of public instruction will have and what powers are going to give to the governor, because the governor has done so well on everything else. So I think really while we're focused on kind of the latest shiny thing, We're gonna have to see how Gavin closes out the next little while. And my warning to the people of the United States is, don't Gavin Newsom America. You got to stay away from this fool. But we'll see as he makes his rounds and starts to push out everything is great in California line when we all here know that it's not.
Yeah, well, you guys know I like to do political cartoons, so I've got one percolating in my head of Gavin Newsom actually setting up his office for Becerra right now and say, "Come on in here and deal with these problems. I'm not using this office."
Yeah.
So look for that cartoon to happen very soon, because I think the Gavin Newsom, he got the one thing he wanted, which is he's got a Republican nominee, a Democratic nominee in Becerra, who is not going to spend the next 2.5 years trying to embarrass Gavin Newsom. Tom Steyer would have, because the guy is so full of himself, would have spent the last 2.5 years saying, "I've got to fix all the problems from the last guy."
Yeah.
Right. And he would have been on it all of the time. So again, I keep going back to that interview that, on Ashley Zavala had on KCRA3, where she had Tom Steyer in the studio, and she was asking every candidate the same question: how would you rate Gavin Newsom? And his response was something to the effect of, "Well, I really haven't paid close enough attention to give him a rating." And you're like, okay, all right, well, we see where that is. Matt, what are your final observations as we close this out?
No, look, I think that election day largely played out as everyone expected it to play out. I think that the Democrats wanted a Becerra versus any Republican Steve Hilton race, because basically the Becerra campaign apparatus will shift to a California Democratic Party apparatus, and he'll campaign up and down the ticket. And I think you're right, John, when you just said that, Becerra is not gonna embarrass Gavin Newsom, and in many ways, Becerra advocating for healthcare for illegals and others. Gavin Newsom, there's a reason why he stopped it, because you just can't fund it, and it
Well,
allows
it's not affordable.
well, but it
So,
allows Gavin Newsom to say, "See, I told you so. I'm a fiscal conservative," and it's just
right.
it's just like it's a bad comedy. So,
Yeah.
but
So, I would just kind of finish off on a few points, one of which I didn't mention it in my statewide tax rant situation, but I do believe that these results for the June primary augur very well for the Save Prop 13 ballot measure, right? That's going to qualify for the ballot, or it has qualified for the ballot, and does two very critical things. It unwinds all these outrageous transfer taxes. So within a very short window period, if they're not reauthorized with a 2/3 vote of the people, they go away, and that has a big impact in Los Angeles. But the bigger impact is, and I don't want to get too wonky, and you can go back and find, podcasts that I've done with John Kupal on this topic. But the Save Prop 13 measure closes this, they call it the upland decision loophole, where in a local government, if a citizen initiated, translation union initiated, local tax increase measure gets on the ballot, it can pass with a majority vote. And that closes that loophole. It makes it really clear. If you want to raise taxes, if you want to take money from people using the force of government, you need to have a supermajority to get that done. And so, once again, by the way, the billionaire tax and the campaign to pass that, I think, is going to create an environment where Save Prop 13 passes right behind it, and really, the appetite of the public employee unions and the regular unions in California California government's never been as big as it is right now. And still every session, more tax increases. We want more spending. It's an unlimited, literally, another political cartoon would be that, like, you're in a boat, right? And you look at the bottom of the boat and there's the stopper, but it's solid gold. But if you pull the stopper out of the boat's going to sink. And these unions would go, "Yeah, but it's made out of gold. Take the stopper. We'll worry about the sinking part later." Right. And at some point, that's kind of where you are, where there's a certain tipping point at which, how much can you tax Californians before, we're already seeing this great migration to other states. California is on the verge of losing 3 to 4 House seats in 2032, which, by the way, also shifts 3 to 4 electoral college votes out of California into other places where they're going to be Republican electoral votes. Anyways, we could go on and on. I'm going to close this up by, first of all, thanking Lance and thanking Matt for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I want to thank all of you in the audience for watching. I'd love to encourage you to hit that heart button one more time, because it really does help the algorithm of people who watch this on Substack. So that's helpful to me. If you find it on there, there's a button, there's a little heart, and you hit that, and it helps me out. And then last but not least, I think I said, Susan, this will be available for you to share with people probably later this afternoon. Susan Shelley's podcast will be coming tomorrow. And we're going to do more of this content. And I really appreciate you all joining us. And look at us. It's 11:58. And we're nothing if we're not punctual here. So we're not going to run over. Thank you very much for participating. And we'll just watch the rest of the slow motion drama of election counting take place all the way until we're at the store buying things for July 4th holiday.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.